So I want to thank you all for attending today. This is our land use model review session. Again, my apologies for any confusions we had with the signing on to the webinar, but hopefully everybody was able to connect easily. What today is going to be mostly about is reviewing the results of our land use model and specifically the trend scenario of our land use model. I'll get into that in a little bit more details later on. So our agenda today is going to be something that looks like this, where we have some basic background and overview. I think most of you have some background and understanding of what we're trying to do here, so I'll try to go through this very quickly so we can spend most of our time on not the background itself, but the actual trend results, and have some kind of interactive discussion where you can ask questions and we can go and look at the mapping itself and see what's going on with the model. So that's my hope for today. And I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. Also, I think we're recording this so that if anybody is interested in checking it out later, they can have the background and understand what we're trying to accomplish with the land use model. So for some housekeeping first, before we get started, I wanted to walk you all through the how to use the platform that you're working on right now. This is a GoToWebinar. You should see something like this with this box containing the, I guess, presentation, and then your panel right here that you can interface with. The panel is expandable. You click the little red arrow and it makes it go to the side, and if you click it again, it goes out. You can actually view your audio selection if you're choosing mic and speakers through your computer, or you can click the radio button for telephone if you would prefer to use that. You can submit questions via the chat pod down there. If you have any questions during the session itself, just let me know, and I will do my best to answer those at the end of each section. And then you can also manage your own muting. Right now I think everybody's on mute. What we're going to do is when the question and answer section comes, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And so you can't see it right here, but in your little box there should be a little hand next to your a little hand icon. And if you check that box, that's you raising your hand, saying, yes, please unmute me, and I have a question I'd like to ask. So let's go ahead and just test the raising the hands. So raise your hand if the audio is good, if you can hear me fine, or if it's too loud or too soft. But if it's good, raise your hand. So let's see. All right. I'm seeing, it sounds like it's working. Excellent. Okay, so what we'll do, if you have a question at the end of the session when we go to the question and answer section, just make sure you raise your hand, and like I said, I'll unmute you. You can ask your question so everybody can hear it. You also can put it into the chat pod if you want. And then your audio itself, you can choose, like I said, telephone or speakers. If you choose the telephone option, your pin is your very own pin, I think. And so that's how we can turn your mute on and off through this through the software. You can use either audio or your computer. Once you're connected, like I say, you just put your pin in the line and you are ready to go. Hopefully everybody is connected and can hear me fine now. So a quick poll for everybody. I just want to make sure, see if everybody is kind of get a sense for how familiar people are with this topic. So if you could just go ahead and fill this out, what it's basically asking is, what's your familiarity with the topic of kind of land use modeling in general? And so just choose a radio button which makes the most sense for you. I'm going to give you maybe 15 or so seconds to click on that and to put your vote. So this will help me kind of have a sense for how quickly I need to go through the next section. All right. So as you can see, it looks like there's a few of you that are very familiar with it, and so I'm glad you've memorized my slide. That's great. And some general familiarity with what we're doing here, but a lot of people kind of are just familiar with the idea. So hopefully I can give you a little more background on what it is we're trying to do, a little more detail. And for you, those of you who are kind of unfamiliar with land use models at all, hopefully at the end of this process I've walked you through kind of what we're trying to do and what a land use model is. All right. Moving right along. So what is a land use model? And it really is a way of forecasting future land uses in the future. And all that's saying is like how do we think development and growth is likely to occur into the future, and we use a computer model to help figure that out. Now, what it is not is this. It's not a crystal ball. It's not a way of getting the exact answer and foretelling, you know, what's going to happen. Any modeler who tells you that's what they can do with their model is selling you something, but probably a bill of goods. But what it does do is it does provide a valuable tool and a way of kind of thinking about the future and making informed decisions about the future and how you want to grow and likely outcomes for the future. So while we can't forecast it perfectly, we can use it as an information tool to help thinking forward into the future itself. And so that's what this land use model is going to be doing. It's going to be assisting with thinking about how growth and development may occur in the future and maybe how we would like it to occur into the future. So the main reason we're looking at doing a land use model, well, there's a couple reasons. One of them is there's a big plan we're working on right now called the Regional Transportation Plan. So that's a major plan for our transportation facilities. And hopefully later on when I talk about how the model works, you'll understand why we need to have this land use model for this transportation plan. You can follow them on Facebook for any updates there. I'll have that link later on if you want to check that out. So the plan itself is for this thing called the TPO, Transportation Planning Organization. And basically TPO is just an organization to funnel all the federal dollars for transportation improvements that come into our area through that organization. So you can see it here with all of Hamilton County, all of Catoosa County, and portions of Walker and Dade County. And that's the actual study area for the Regional Transportation Plan, and that's also the area we use for the land use model itself. Now, what the plan tries to think about is looking out to 2040, what do we think are going to be our transportation improvements that we need to have? So one way it does this is with a travel demand model, which is just another computer program that looks at kind of the base growth and where people are by 2040, where are they located, where are the people, where are the jobs, and then it starts deciding how those people will be fed onto the network, and it tries to replicate reality as best as it can, so that what you have is a model showing you where you think there might be congestion points or problem points in the future based on where people are going. But the key there is where people live and where they work, and that's that land use piece. So what we're trying to do with our land use models is to be a little more sophisticated than we have in the past about our demographic projections that we feed into this travel demand model. So that's one thing we're hoping to do for that regional transportation plan. We're also trying to get a sense for this, get a hold of this land use transportation connection, and there's this kind of interplay between where people live and work and the transportation facilities around them, and so one way you can kind of illustrate that is through these land use models and compare the land use outcomes of the transportation outcomes of different land use scenarios. And speaking of scenarios, we're going to be developing some scenarios as part of the regional transportation plan. The one we'll be discussing and showing today is what we're calling the trend scenario, which is if we keep working as we have in the past or keep moving forward as we have in the past, what are the likely growth outcomes? Where are we likely to grow into the future based on past trends? And we might have a series of other alternatives to compare that to in the future, but that's mostly what we're focusing on now for this review. So the main question is kind of how does it work? Well, it can be a little bit complicated. This is the actual model structure for our land use model here, and each one of these shows the interconnections between the various pieces of the model itself. And it looks fairly complicated, at least to me it does, and it makes my head hurt sometimes when trying to think through the whole thing. But really it breaks down to maybe 4 questions that we're trying to answer through this land use model. What land is available for development? So what is the capacity of that land to hold development? So how many employees or households is it likely to hold, or can it hold? What is the likelihood of one piece of land developing over another? So, what's the suitability or the likelihood of that land getting developed? And then based on those things, the availability, capacity, and suitability or likelihood, where is growth likely to occur? So those are the 4 questions we're trying to answer through our land use modeling practice here at the Regional Planning Agency. The first question, what land is available for development? So we first thing we did is we looked at the constraints, because you cannot build everywhere. There's things that kind of restrict development, things like floodways, wetlands over an acre, and slopes over 30%. So below, on the map here, you see this kind of dark gray things on the map, and those are the constraints. For the study area itself, it's over 100,000 acres is constrained by some form of environmental factor, or 21% of the study area. So I think that's important to note that within our study area itself, the topography kind of has some heavy constraints on where development can and cannot occur. So that's the first question of what land is available for development. The next thing we did is we looked at the land supply. So the map this map showing the land supply, the areas in whites are already developed. The dark green are what we call protected lands, and then this lighter green are those undeveloped properties. So on those undeveloped properties, 37,000 of those acres of those properties have those constraints that you saw on the previous slide of them. That leaves a total of 117,000 acres to be available for building on. So what that equates to is a land area larger than if you combine Chattanooga, Saudi Daisy, and Collegedale. So if you combine those 3 jurisdictions, you would have roughly proportional the land area that we have that is undeveloped in the study area. Put another way, just looking at the proportion for the study area, again, the white is developed, light green is undeveloped, and dark green is protected. We have 58% of the study areas developed, 10% protected, and 32% undeveloped. So then we started thinking about, once we had an idea of what the capacity, not the capacity, but what land was available for development, we started looking at the capacity of the land. And how we did that was with these things called place types, which are just generic land uses, or what's actually on the ground itself. And that provides kind of the DNA for thinking about the capacity of the land itself, because that within the place types, it has information about the density, how many people can be there, for how many jobs can be there, based on the type of place that it is. So we use that to kind of build in what we think the capacity of that land may be into the future. So that's the place. You can see the place types for the study area. Again, with the dark green is those protected lands that are taken kind of off the table from the model. And then we started thinking about this idea of how likely is one piece of property to develop over another. The way we did this is we looked at suitability for 3 different things, because we thought that maybe residential suitability, where you want to live, is a little bit different from where you want to put an industrial facility versus where you want to put a new retail center. So we have 3 different suitabilities: residential, non-residential, and industrial. Here showing the residential. Darker colors means more suitable, lighter colors means less suitable, and there's a variety of factors that were developed that were used for thinking about what makes something suitable. It includes things like presence of sewer and water, cost of the land, quality of life, kind of access, things like access to jobs and retail centers, transit, large hospitals, those types of things. And then also, what else? Yeah, proximity to good schools. So those, and topography was also a piece there. So those kind of weighted all those together, and we get this composite map based on all those factors. That's the residential suitability. And then we have the non-residential suitability, which looks similar. I'll go back to the residential. You can see it's mostly kind of the outlying areas on the mountains, the outlining areas here, and in North Georgia is kind of those areas. And North Chattanooga. Those areas is kind of seen as more suitable for development. Again, later on we have the discussion. If you want to zoom in a little bit more to see the suitability in more detail, we can do that. during the question and answer section if you have any questions specifically about the suitabilities. So then this is non-residential. It's similar, but you see more clusters within the urban area, especially around existing corridors here in the within the city. And so you see it definitely focused along corridors and existing retail nodes. Something similar you see in industrial, kind of near those employment nodes, but also you see another. You also see it's being influenced by proximity, not just to interstate, but also rail access as well in large parcels. And so those two things have been added in, the rail access and large parcels, to kind of look at the suitability for industrial. So I went through those pretty quickly, and I don't see any chat questions. So if it's okay with you all, I'm just going to go ahead and keep on running through to the next one, which is this talking about this trend scenario that we're developing. And the trend scenario, like I said, is just trying to, as best we can, trying to replicate what we think might happen into the future based on past trends. And the main way we did that is we actually convened a group of area experts. Our focus was on developers, home builders, real estate professionals, so people who actually do this work day in and day out and actually are building this stuff. And we asked them questions about, what things constrain the site, what things make a site more suitable than another site, and where do we think growth is likely to go into the future. And so a lot of those things you saw on the previous slides were actually directly grew from that development community, and kind of performs the base for this trend model scenario. In general, the group thought that the areas likely to grow will continue to be greenfield suburban development, kind of in the North Georgia, Udawal, towards Bradley County, unless sewer is extended in other areas. But kind of as it is now, they see those areas as growth potential and likely to develop into the future. So our model should reflect something along those lines looking forward. All right, so the results. Now I'm going to kind of walk you through the results of the model itself. I'll try to spend a little more time here, but I'm hoping we can spend more time on the question and answer and actually get interactive with the map if you're interested in kind of seeing what shows up there. First of all, a slight caveat. So we're doing something now which is called the calibration phase of the modeling process, and that just means we're kind of constantly tweaking the model to make it refine it to make the results better and better. We think that what we have now is pretty good, and it's going to be very similar to the final product, but there may be some slight changes from what you see now to what the final product is that gets fed into the travel demand model for the regional transportation plan. But I wanted to give you that caveat just so you know what's going on and kind of our process here. So the next is the household allocation. This is the allocation at the TAZ level. So the TAZ is just traffic analysis zones. They're kind of unique areas. Think like a census tract or some kind of that kind of splits up the study area into discrete units, and that's used by that travel demand model I mentioned before. So here you can see where the households are going based on the current trend model. Again, the green is the lowest and the dark red is the highest. So what we're seeing is we are seeing growth out in the Udawal towards Bradley County area, and then also some in Hickson, Saudi going up that way, and then on the mountains we are seeing a little bit up here, and then also in North Georgia, mostly in Catoosa County. So it kind of does jive with what the development focus group was thinking the growth would be occurring, kind of on the peripheral, mostly greenfield, and moving towards kind of Bradley County and North Georgia. Just some general metrics. This model allocates 23,000 households within a city boundary, within a jurisdictional boundary, and 22,000 outside of a jurisdictional boundary. And most of the growth is occurring on parcels smaller than 10 acres. So those smaller parcels have around 27,000 households being allocated to them. at that location. The next map is just kind of it's the same map, but it's just showing you in a heat map format where those growth is occurring. You see some concentrations in East Brainerd, and then along North Georgia and existing communities there. Here we have the total employment. Again, you can see the growth is green is lower, red is higher. I wanted to show you these darker parcels here, which are actually negative growth into the future. So there were some sectors that were negative into the future, and I'll discuss those a little bit later on when we talk about the employment categories, because employment is actually broken down into 6 categories, and so we're going to review each one of those, and some of them were negative, and that kind of had some issues with the model, but we'll get into that later. Again, growth, this looks like it's occurring, looks like there is some growth occurring along the corridors within the core, and then in North Georgia it's kind of spread out. We'll when we go into the different sectors, you get a better sense for how that growth is being distributed. And again, during the question and answer, we can actually look at the map itself and zoom in to an area if you're interested. This is the mining and construction. Again, agricultural mining and construction. Most of that growth is happening along existing corridors and interstates mostly, and moving out towards Bradley County. And then also some in North Georgia as well. I'm going to show you. So the next one, this is the first sector. The next sector is manufacturing and transportation. We do see some focus in the Lookout Valley and the kind of urban core, and then also kind of like I said, heading out towards Bradley County and North Georgia as well. What's happening there, that we did a little sleuthing into the model, and there's I think what the model's picking up is the undeveloped brownfield sites within the city itself. So it was allocating growth to those locations, that manufacturing growth into those locations, and so I think we think that's maybe what's occurring, why that growth is kind of clustered within the urban areas there. Retail is concentrated along in North Georgia along major roads, and then in Hamilton County along near Hamilton Place, and all the retail that occurs there, which seems to make sense. And then again, there's also that continued development out towards North Bradley and a little bit in Northgate and Lakeside. And then service. So this map's kind of a hodgepodge map, and I think that's reflected by the fact that service is such a ubiquitous sector and kind of is spread throughout, and not really necessarily concentrated in one type of place type, but spread throughout many different place types. So we have a kind of more even distribution across the modeling area. So that's what you're seeing here occurring with the service distribution. You're going to see something similar with office, but not to the same extent, for the similar reasons you had the kind of spread out distribution with the service as well. And then our final one is government, and this is the most government's the problem in our model to this time, because we have some negative allocations going on here, and so the areas in dark green are negative allocations, but don't really make sense because there's not a whole lot of government employment in those areas. And so this is one sector that we're going to have to go back and spend a little bit more time on and make sure we understand how the model is allocating and subtracting out those that decline in the sector into the future. So this one probably out of all the allocations, this one will probably be the most changed from the previous slides itself. So, well, that was pretty rapid fire. I wanted to go ahead and take this chance to raise your hands if you have any questions, and we can get started. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the map. Hopefully you all can see this now. This is our interactive map, so we can review things if you have questions you want to look in. If you wanted to look in and see the site in more detail. Does anybody have any questions or things they'd like to look at as far as either suitability or the actual allocation itself? If so, you can raise your hand or chat it in the box. This is your one chance. All right, David, I see one from David. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and see if you should be able to talk now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're there. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about some of the suitability maps.
Sure.
I think you can see like kind of a cutoff line, it almost looked like, about halfway up Hamilton County.
Yes.
Where the colors kind of dramatically change. I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure, I can definitely comment on that. So what's occurring there is one of the factors that the development community said that most constrained development was availability of sewer and water. And so that hard line you're seeing in Hamilton County is from our conversations with the water and sewer authorities as to where they think the cutoff will be as far as sewer by 2040. So those areas that are lighter are what we think will not be sewered by 2040, and so their suitability score is drastically lower than it normally would have been, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is taking a while to load. I might just show the actual map itself so you can take a look at it. 1 second. Oh, sorry, it's blacked out. I think we're frozen right now, so I'll go back to the map. Yeah, so you can see it. You can see what David's talking about right here is this kind of clear delineation between suitable and not suitable. One thing that was difficult with the residential suitability was another deciding factor was the good schools was a high priority. So where are the good schools and where is sewer and water were two things we heard from developers. And the school quality is not a static thing, so it changes over time. So it's a little bit difficult to say necessarily just because one school district is good now, by 2040 it will still be good. But we had to kind of go with our best guess, and so what we did use current conditions to kind of be a indicator for future conditions. So then here you see the residential suitability. Let me see if I can show you retail. Yeah. So this is retail, which you saw before. Again, this is just a heat map showing you the kind of the hot nodes for that. Again, mostly it's along existing corridors, as you would guess, and also what do you call it? Hamilton Place and a little bit downtown. And then if we turn on the hodgepodge ones like service, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, let me fix Hamilton County. It's a little weak there. So I mean, it doesn't look as hodgepodge here. You can see there's definitely some nodes of activity. Mostly a lot of downtown towards Enterprise South and Hamilton Place, and then within the existing jurisdictions in North Georgia as well. And then I think you're going to see something similar with the office because they have similar suitabilities and place types associated with them. So let's go ahead and turn that one on. Yeah, it's very similar to the office. And then manufacturing, yeah, looks like it's again mostly downtown in Lookout Valley, and then also in the Ringgold area. So that's kind of that's the basics of the actual land use model itself. What's going to happen now is we're going to just do a quick poll for you all. Get a little more information about the your thoughts on the poll itself, and what we're trying to get a sense for is how close we are with this current trend model. Again, this is not necessarily if you could just go ahead and pull in your votes there, what you think as far as the model, how the model is performing. This is kind of our does it pass the straight face test? Are we on the right? Are we on the going in the right direction, or do we need to kind of reevaluate what we're doing here? So that's what this question is getting at. I'm going to give you all just a few more seconds to vote. All right, last chance to vote. I'm going to go ahead and close it now. Oh, it looks like one person snuck in before I closed it. So what we looks like overall, most people do think we're heading in the right direction. Definitely need a little bit of tweaking. If there are some things specifically that bother you, please reach out to us and let us know. You can contact me directly. I'll give you my contact information at the end, or you can call the person over me, you and Lee, because we want to make sure we have the best model we can for being fed into this transportation plan that we're working on in the travel demand model. But in general, it looks like it's mostly correct, and it does pass that straight. We can say with a straight face that this model is performing like we think it should, and is kind of is showing what we think the trend might look like in the future. One more poll before we move on, while I have you, is this is a new format for us here at the RPA. This GoToWebinar, and so we're just kind of evaluating it to see if it's useful or if it's good or if it's not that good. And so if you could let us know if you think this is, if the format and information provided was helpful or not helpful, that will help us when thinking about how we're going to be using this tool in the future, or if we will be using the tool in the future, actually. So, all right. Thank you. Again, it looks like it was helpful for most people, format and information, as far as what we provided today. So I'm glad to hear that. So next steps, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a little bit more tweaks, like I said, for that, the government sectors and things like that. But it's mostly there. And so that's going to mean a lot more of this for me, late nights, working on the model. My coworkers make fun of me because I have 3 computers in my office. And I'm in one chair sliding between the 3 computers, running different pieces in the model and working on different things as time goes. So they joke that I'm going to be taking over all the computers by the time this model is completed. So yes, a little more tweaking. Like I said, it sounds like that's what people think maybe a little bit more needs to happen. Again, if you have any specifics, contact us. And then after that, we're going to be moving forward with the integration into the regional transportation plan and that travel demand model itself. If you want to, there's going to be some upcoming public meetings in October on I think the 22nd and 23rd, so if you're interested in attending those, be sure to check out the Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/2040RTP, and you should have all the information about what's going to happen during that next engagement cycle. Like I said, please reach out to me. This is my phone number and email address if you have any questions, comments that you would like to address to me, or if you just want even more detailed overview of the model, be glad to walk you through it and show you kind of how we have it all put together. And with that concludes the online review. I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedule to show up today and assist us and kind of see what we've been working on. I know we're real excited that the pieces are starting to come together, and we're starting to get some good results from the model, and we're excited about moving forward in the future and finding new and interesting uses for this tool. So I want to thank you all for attending. 1 second, I think Wayne had a question before we end. Wayne, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay. Tell me again, is there a way that we have access to this information, to these slides later on? What do we do to keep this information?
So on the actual, I think it's on the Facebook page, and then probably also, I think there's also a project page for the Regional Transportation Plan. We'll post this webinar, so you can actually watch it again, just if you are so inclined. And I think we can probably also post the actual slides as well.
Okay. You're assuming that we have a Facebook page on our side.
Right. But there is a project website that you don't have to have Facebook with, and that will be posted there as well.
I'm just kidding. I heard you.
Okay. That's a good question. Thank you. Go ahead, John. Oop. Let's see. John, did you have a question? I have you unmuted. I guess no. If you do have a question and you can't talk, you can actually put it in the chat box, and I can try to answer it through there as well. Okay, looks like not a question. So like I said, I really appreciate everybody showing up today. We will be posting this to the project site and the Facebook page, and I'll also send a email to you all letting you know when that has been posted, so you